Hi, thanks for joining us on Your Kentucky at Home. We have a special treat for you today. We are with Anthony Lamas with Ceviche Restaurant. And Anthony, you're going to prepare a special dish for us today.
I am. In the spirit of Valentine's, we're going to add a little citrus and spice that makes everything nice. So I'm going to do a lobster ceviche that has a little bit of sweet potato and lots of different textures. It's really a simple dish because you can kind of get these steps done ahead. So it really makes it nice that it's something you can do at home.
With Valentine's Day, you always think about preparing a nice meal for your family at home instead of going out. What are some of the things that you prepare for your family at home for Valentine's Day?
Well, I don't prepare too much at home because I'm here preparing for everyone else. So it's one of our busiest nights. But we make sure that we have lots of luscious and exotic ingredients. You know, so you're going to see lobster on there. You might see some truffles. Of course, the desserts are going to be decadent. You know, and there are a lot of ingredients that kind of get your blood flowing a little bit, called aphrodisiac ingredients. Chilies are one of them, and if you think about it, a little spice kind of gets you flushed in the face, maybe makes you sweat a little bit, and I think that food is becomes such a beautiful art, and it's very central because you see it, you smell it, you taste it, you feel the textures. So it's always exciting to create menus on Valentine's Day because it is a special day and it's a day that people want to go out and eat.
And you have a cookbook that shows them how to make this dish and a lot of others.
I do. It's called Southern Heat. It's a little bit of the heat coming from my spice of my Latin heritage, and then the southern part being that I'm in this South area, influenced by Southern ingredients. So a lot of my food you're going to see are the flavor profiles that I know, but maybe some ingredients that are a little bit different than you would see maybe in Latin America. Because we love our sorghum around here and our grits and our country ham. So you might see those kind of, you know, in my food, which makes it a little bit different and exciting.
One of the things I liked about your book is you talk about how you became a chef and what your influences were. For those that don't have the book, will you kind of share that with us?
Yeah, well, I didn't know at first. I grew up when I was about 11 years old. My grandfather and uncle opened a restaurant, so I grew up around it. The first thing I learned was a trade, you know, to be able to use a knife. And I thought of cooking more as a trade. It wasn't until later on that I saw the art form of food and that you could use your creative mind, because I've always been kind of a creative person. I love music and I love to draw. But before that, if you back up a little bit, during that time, I was a big part of FFA, Future Farmers of America. Yes. I grew up at the time in the 80s, Central California was the largest agricultural area of America. More than 90% of agriculture was coming to the rest of the United States. Thank God that we have these small farmers now, and you're seeing farmers kind of come back, and all these different places are now creating or growing or raising amazing product for us chefs. So it's been exciting to see America really change in that direction. But yeah, so really just kind of growing up around it, and then once I saw the art, and then I knew I was hooked. So, and once I saw that I could use my creative mind, take the flavors that I knew from my mother and grandmother and the things I grew up eating, and then kind of present them in a new, refined, or reinvent the dishes a little bit.
So speaking about presenting, you're going to make a dish here for us today. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to make.
So today I thought I'd introduce or create, thinking of Valentine's Day, something that's going to be really pretty to the eye, lots of textures. Once again, you're playing with all the senses, you know, and that's what I think about Valentine's Day. It's a special day, love is in the air. So we're going to use some beautiful lobster, and I'm going to do a lobster ceviche, but a little bit of a twist. A lot of people don't realize that the Peruvians use sweet potato in their ceviches, and it adds really a nice sweetness to cool the palate from the spice. So we're going to use some ingredients that, of course, chilies are known as aphrodisiac. Kind of gets you flushed in the face, kind of gets you the blood running a little bit. So we're going to do this beautiful cold water lobster ceviche. It's got a little bit of sweet potato and this broth that's called leche de tigre, tiger's milk.
So how do you put this together?
So we're going to start with the lobster, and then we'll cook it. I'll talk about that. Then we'll blanch it and shock it in ice water. That stops the cooking, and I'm going to explain how to do that. So we have some water here. I want to add a little bit. I want to season my water. I always want to make sure that when you're cooking, at least the way I cook, you're always layers of flavor. So it doesn't matter if you're just boiling something, baking something, you always want to season. So I have a little salt in there. I have some lemon zest. I just took some fresh lemon out of there, a couple bay leaves. And then what I'll do is I have my lobster tails, and these are just little 3-ounce, 4-ounce lobster tails. You can get bigger ones, whatever. You can get whole lobsters, break it down. But what I like to do is I like to cut it and then release the meat. I'm gonna leave the shell on there, but this kind of keeps it together and it makes it easy to pull out, because sometimes when you cook it, it'll get stuck in the shell, and this way I get everything. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna drop them right in there. So what I'll do here is, basically, you can see how quickly they'll start to turn orange already. Cooks really quick because I had my water boiling here. And so we'll let that usually about 1 minute to 3 minutes, depending on the size of your lobster. I pick the meat here, and so I kind of have my ingredients here. So here I have my lobster. I have my sweet potato. Traditionally in Peru, they would just do chunks of it. This is kind of a new refined version of it.
So did you parade?
I did. So what I did is I cooked my sweet potato. Added a little bit of white pepper, salt, and lemon juice, and just pureed it up. Okay. So you have this nice, I just like the way it looks and the mouthfeel to it, and the smooth. And it brings some fattiness to it, to the dish, to really balance it. And as I said, you know, when I really think about putting a dish together, it's about texture, about layers of flavor. So I have some just raw red onion and some radishes. I have some little bit of celery sprouts. Usually they would serve this with a little bit of lettuce on the plate, but I love the way these celery sprouts taste. And then I have these little micro flowers that add a little spice as well, kind of like you would think of arugula or something like that. It has, or a radish. So they're not just for garnish, they actually add some flavor to it, but they're pretty as well.
And where would you get this? Where would you get the flowers in Louisville?
So, you know, a lot of times farmers markets, a lot of people are growing them themselves now. But, you know, I think that Creation Gardens has an area that's a retail, so you can buy a lot of these cool products. Okay, so we'll start with the dish. So what I've done is I have my lobster meat. I'm going to give that some flavor before I put it on the dish, even though I will add some more of the broth. So here I have my leche de tigre. Leche de tigre is known as tiger's milk. It's the broth that really brings all the flavor and spice to the dish. This is a little bit of chipotle chilies, some lime, there's a little bit of garlic, toasted cumin, and just spices with lots of citrus. So I'll add that here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an extra fresh lime just at the very end, and this really will bring it all together, some nice acid. Now, traditionally, if you were doing ceviche with fresh fish, you wouldn't cook it. The lime would cook it. But in this case, we like to blanch the lobster so it's real nice and tender, because if you just marinate it in the lime, it would make the outside a little bit rubbery and firm, and then the inside would still be raw. And this is just kind of a trick that my mother always did when she made her shrimp ceviche. So I have my lobster there, and I like to just let that sit for a few minutes and just take up all that flavor. I'm going to add a little sea salt to that to really balance it, because we have a lot of citrus. And then I'm going to add a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, and that adds another fatty component, and it just gives you this lusciousness. I mean, you can just eat that like that already and throw everything in there in a bowl. And that's how I like to eat ceviche, but this is for Valentine's, so we're going to make it really pretty and refined. So what I'll do is I'll start off with my sweet potato, and I'll just kind of put a big amount here, because this, we can just kind of make this little sweet potato boat where I'm going to put everything in. So we have our sweet potato down. And then what I'll do is I'll take this beautiful lobster. Okay, we're going to use the broth as well. But what I'm going to do is first put this lobster meat on here. And, you know, when you think of lobster, you think of this beautiful ingredient that's luscious and buttery. And so I think we're good right there on the lobster. So we just have our lobster right across. Then I'm going to take some of this broth again, and we're going to go right in there. And the nice thing about presenting the sweet potato like this is it's going to keep all this broth right in there. Do you see how I've created this sort of little vessel here that's going to hold everything so it doesn't go all over? Because ceviche is a very rustic dish, and that's what I like to do, is I like to take these classic Latino dishes and just kind of reinvent them or reinterpretate them in a more refined way. So we have our lobster meat there. Now this is where we can start adding some different components. As I said, we have some celery sprouts, some radishes, some raw onion, some of these little edible flowers. So I'm gonna add some little flakes of sea salt, okay? even though I did season that, we're talking about layering flavors. And when you get that, it's going to add some little texture too. I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil. Okay. And this is really about layering. And then what I'll do is I'm going to add some of these beautiful sprouts, because these give some nice freshness. They're really beautiful kind of bright celery freshness to the dish. Like I said, you might see this served with some lettuce in Peru. So these little sprouts are going to add some freshness. Then I'll add some beautiful radishes, and I'll just kind of randomly maybe put those in a couple different areas. Once again, we're adding some flavor, but we're also adding texture.
It's so beautiful.
Right, just simple. And these are a little mix of radishes. So you have some white radishes, some purple, and so we start to do that, and the dishes come together. And then I like to add a little raw onion. It's a nice bite. I think onions have a beautiful natural spice on their own. And to me, this really adds a component to the dish, texturally and flavor, most importantly, as my mother says. Flavor first. You can make it look pretty, but it better taste good.
Well, thank you so much for showing us this today and sharing your story with us and some of your recipes and your inspiration.
Of course.
We'll be back with more of your Kentucky in a Home in just a moment. Tune in next week for more Beautiful Homes.
Your Kentucky in a Home is brought to you by Window World of Louisville.